Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. So today I have a really crazy current events video for you guys. If you are unfamiliar with this series, this is a series in which I, react to ridiculous things that are going around while having some gameplay in the background. Now, this is the story of an American soldier who probably defected to North Korea. We're gonna say probably because we don't know, but everything is actually pointing to the possibilities that he probably did defect to North Korea. Now, you're watching this video and you haven't heard about this story, you're probably thinking to yourself, Professional, are you sure it wasn't a North Korean soldier who defected to South Korea? Yes, I'm sure it's an American soldier who actually went to North Korea. You almost never hear about that. It does happen. It's very rare where people will defect to North Korea. Most of the time, it's where people from North Korea will defect to South Korea. But this is an American soldier that was on tour in South Korea, and he ended up crossing into North Korea, and he surrendered there, and he's being held in North Korean custody. And I'm going to react to this. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on this. I do read a lot about North Korea, and so I'm going to let you guys know what I think about this story, and I'm going to talk about a few things that I think that people are getting wrong about this story. So anyways, I'll link this article down below. A U.S. soldier who crossed into North Korea on Tuesday did so willfully and without authorization. According to U.S. and international officials, he's now believed to be in custody of North Korean armed forces. The man whom a U.S. Army spokesperson identified as Travis King was a private second class who'd been released recently from a detention center in South Korea. He was scheduled to be flown home to the U.S. when he somehow returned to South Korea, joined a tour group to the demilitarized zone, and ran across the heavily fortified border into North Korea. Here's an overview of what we know. Who is Travis King? Officials say Private Second Class King has been a cavalry scout with the U.S. Army since January 2021. The 23-year-old had been stationed in South Korea, but recently served 2 months in prison there on charges of assault, the Associated Press reported. I think this is very important to the story, and I'll explain why. Several South Korean media outlets reported that King had punched a South Korean national in a club last September. He had also been fined 5 million won, equivalent to $3,942, for causing public damage and being uncooperative with police during his arrest. According to an account from the Chosun Ilbo newspaper citing legal sources, King yelled obscenities at South Korean police as he kicked the doors and interior of a police vehicle. CBS News report that King was released to U.S. officials at the military hub in the country about a week ago. So, in South Korea, if an American soldier actually commits a crime, he is subject to South Korean laws. He assaulted somebody and struggled with the police. Before bolting into North Korea, King was being escorted to an airport outside of Seoul, where he was expected to board a plane bound for Fort Bliss, Texas, to face military disciplinary action. Officials escorted him throughout airport security, but King somehow managed to ditch the escort and make his way out of the terminal and back to the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. That is where officials said King, who was dressed in civilian clothes, joined a tour of the Korean border village of Panmunjom. What happened when King crossed the border? One member of the tour group described the incident on a now deleted Facebook post, saying that King laughed loudly, then ran between the two buildings and eventually into North Korea. Another told the AP that King was one of 43 tourists in the group and appeared to be traveling alone, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt. He made his move at the end of the tour, disappearing down a narrow passageway between the DMZ's famous blue buildings before the soldiers standing there guard on the South Korean side had time to respond, said the woman. Sarah Leslie. Leslie said she didn't see any guards on the North Korean side and was told by her tour guides that the army there had decreased its presence at the DMZ since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's still unclear whether King planned to escape into North Korea or whether it was something he did on a whim. Some experts say the trip just to the demilitarized zone takes days of planning. Leslie said she had been required to submit her passport or to receive a permit in advance of the tour. Okay. So this article keeps going on and on. It's a pretty long one, but basically that's the majority of it. Now, what I'm going to talk about here is I think that this was a defection. We don't know this 100%, but I do think that this was a defection. And the reason is the key is that he was facing disciplinary charges in the U.S. So he was going to be punished when he was actually going to come back to the U.S. He was probably going to get dishonorably discharged. Dishonorably discharged means that you get thrown out of the military. You get basically kicked out of the military. That's what probably was going to happen to him. And so this guy had gotten pissed off at that and basically just said, screw it. I'm going to North Korea. We'll just see what happens there. That's probably what happened. Now, here's the thing about this. There's a lot of people that I've noticed in the comments section on a lot of videos on the news talking about this. And a lot of people are saying the North Koreans are going to kill him. But in my opinion, I don't think the North Koreans are going to kill him. I'm not defending the North Koreans at all, but I'm just saying is think about it this way. This guy is too important for them to kill. This guy they could probably use as a hostage and probably use as a bargaining chip. This is an American soldier that crossed into North Korea, and the North Korean government can now basically say, oh, we have an American in custody, give us something. Release this person for us, or give us this, or reduce your troop presence in South Korea. They could try to demand something, payment, anything. So they could try to get something out of this guy. So that's why I don't think they're going to kill him, because they're going to use him as a hostage and probably use him to try to get something out of the U.S. and out of the South Korean government. That's probably my best guess on that. Now, here's the thing about this, is this is actually not the first time that this has happened, but it has been decades since an American soldier has actually defected to North Korea. Now, this guy might have actually been inspired by this guy right here on the screen, James Dresnock. Now, if you don't know who James Dresnock is, James Dresnock was actually an American soldier that served in the American military on the DMZ in South Korea in the 1960s. What happened was he had a very similar story where he was actually facing charges. He was probably going to get kicked out of the military, and so he just said, screw it, I'm going to North Korea. And it was him and a bunch of other soldiers that went to North Korea. And as far as I know, the three other soldiers the American soldiers that went to North Korea, they all wanted to return. They were begging to return, and they went to the Soviet embassy and were even begging them at that time to return them to the U.S. Eventually, I think most of those guys did return to the U.S. One of the guys I know stayed there for some time, and then he married a Japanese woman that was in North Korea, and then he escaped to Japan with his wife. But James Dresnock, he stayed there. He never returned, and what happened was he basically became a propaganda machine for the North Korean government. The North Korean government used James Dresnock to actually create propaganda. So he would create propaganda, he would write propaganda that was anti-American, anti-South Korea. He would defend the North Korean government, say that North Korea is the only true Korea. And what James Dresnock also did was he had actually played in North Korean movies. So this is actually a picture of him. He would play in a lot of North Korean movies, and whenever he played in North Korean movies, he would typically play as the evil American in those movies, and he would just make the U.S. look bad. Now, about James Dresnock I'm not defending him. The guy was a traitor, but if you actually read James Dresnock's life, it actually makes perfect sense why he actually defected to North Korea. He grew up homeless most of his life when he was a kid. His parents were abusive to him. His parents didn't want him. He was given into custody by his aunt, and his aunt didn't even want him. And eventually, his dad took custody of him, and what his dad basically did was his dad had driven him to a retirement home. And at that retirement home, the dad had told him that they're going to visit a relative, but the dad just left him there at the retirement home. And he never saw his dad, his mom again. His parents had basically just abandoned him on the streets. He didn't finish high school. He got into a lot of fights in his youth. And what ended up happening is he married a woman when he joined the military, and that woman actually ended up cheating on him. And so that broke him. And then he got into trouble with the U.S. military. I don't remember what he did exactly, but he was facing some kind of assault charges, I believe. So the point is, Dresnock had a pretty messed up life, messed up childhood, messed up adult life. Just bad things were just happening around him constantly. And so one day he just basically snapped and just said, you know what, screw this, I'm going to North Korea. And the North Korean government basically gave him whatever he wanted. They turned him into a celebrity. This was the perfect guy for them to turn into a celebrity. And so that's why James Dresnock probably stayed there, because he'd basically been given everything that he wanted. And so it was still wrong what he did. I'm not defending him. So he is a traitor. I want to be clear, I'm not defending him. He's a scumbag, but he passed away a few years ago. But at that time, he didn't really have much left in his life. And so when he went to North Korea, the North Korean government basically made him into a propaganda celebrity, letting him star in movies, make propaganda for them, and you can understand to a degree why he felt at home there. And so this guy, this Travis King guy, I think that this is probably the exact same thing. He's probably hoping the exact same thing happens to him. He possibly heard about this story because it just sounds so similar to it. And so he's probably hoping that he's possibly going to be a propaganda icon in North Korea, that he's going to be turned into some celebrity by the North Korean government. That's at least my analysis on it, at least what I possibly think. Because the North Koreans, like I said, I don't think they're going to kill him because he's just too valuable. They're probably going to use him as a hostage, or they're going to basically turn him into a propaganda machine. And you could possibly hear in a few months where he's going to be broadcasting propaganda directed against U.S. soldiers and against South Korean soldiers. That's definitely a possibility that could happen. As for the area where he actually defected, the area where he actually defected is the JSA, or the Joint Security Area. This is actually an area on the North and South Korean border where both North and South Korea can have talks. So when you actually see, like, you see it in movies and you see it a lot of times in documentaries, it's that area where you have like those small little blue buildings that are like in the middle, and then you have like a big South Korean building and a big North Korean building on both sides, and both soldiers are basically just kind of looking at each other. This place is where Travis actually escaped to. This is not, an area that has barbed wire or is fortified by mines. This was an area where, if you wanted to, you could just run across. Right there. It's one of the few places where there really is no fence, but it is also heavily guarded. And so during the tour, apparently he just decided, you know what, screw this, and just ran across to the North Korean side. The blue buildings in between the buildings, both sides can actually go into them. So they're actually kind of like a neutral ground where both the North and the South Koreans can have discussions. But this guy, we're going to see what basically happens with him. I'm really curious how this story is going to end. But this guy has basically just ruined his life. He's done a really stupid thing. He should have just went back to the U.S., just taken this dishonorable discharge. But now basically he's in the most unfree country in the world. And I don't know what he's hoping to happen to him. Maybe something possibly like Dresnok. And also, one other thing I forgot to mention about this is actually Dresnok's kids. That American that defected to North Korea, this is actually his kids. And his kids actually claim to be in the North Korean military, which it's just a bit creepy with this whole story going on. But let me know what you guys think down below of this situation. If you guys enjoyed videos like this, do drop a like, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.